Awesome. We're now recording. Once again, welcome founders. And today's session is another headliner session with Felix from KotaniPay. A good number of us are familiar with KotaniPay, but I'll let Felix introduce himself and what they do at KotaniPay. And then we can go ahead to the teams to just briefly introduce themselves so that Felix can get a good idea of who he's speaking to. And then we can kick things off. We usually have this under an hour. So towards the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A. We can learn more maybe about the content of the presentation that Felix will make. Or even if it's outside of the presentation, we're very much welcome to ask Felix. So Karibu sana, Felix. Go ahead, just introduce yourself. Then we'll go ahead for the founders to introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you, Matu. I think you can hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so my name is Felix Macharia. I'm CEO and co-founder at KotaniPay. KotaniPay has been around now for about 5 years. I think we were celebrating our 5th year last month. As a concept, as an idea, it grew out of Kotani Labs. That was 7 years ago, back in 2018, when we were part of a community called EOS Nairobi. So EOS Nairobi was doing node validation on the EOS blockchain, one of the very early proof of stake blockchains. It was able to build a community and fund it based on just node validation rewards. So any rewards that were coming from the node will be split between keeping their services up and also funding startups within Kotani Labs. So one of the great ideas that came from Kotani Labs was the whole idea of dealing with the on-ramp off-ramp problem at the time through USSD wallet. So build a USSD blockchain wallet. The front end, it's USSD. On the back end, it's actually a blockchain account. And then there was the ability to off-ramp directly to M-Pesa. And that then gave us our first set of customers, mostly NGOs, who are interested in using this for cash transfer and other forms of other pilots, including microloans and so on and so forth. Over time, of course, we have evolved the business model so that today our primary focus is not the USSD wallet anymore, although from time to time we still get requests to assist with pilots. We actually did give that technology away for free. All the work we had done with phone address-based encryption and so on, we gave it out for free as part of the UNICEF Digital Public Goods Program. So we just mainly assist when it comes to pilots. Our main focus now is B2B, on-ramp, off-ramp. It's there's a payment orchestration layer that is live in about 7 countries that serves exchanges and wallets. And the other one is an OTC desk. I'll call it an OTC mega desk that also functions in those countries and deals with large volume trades, local currency to crypto and crypto back to local currency. I think that I was told that the main purpose of this session is to talk about how to raise. And we have been fortunate enough at KotaniPay to have raised at least $2 million across 2 rounds, both dilutive capital, meaning capital that's tied to us giving away ownership, and non-dilutive capital, which are grants and so on. So a lot of what I'll share, I'll be speaking from my experience, but I also try to be as holistic as possible. So thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I think we can go one by one. Let's start with David Machuche. Just a minute. Let us know what you're doing. Then we'll go to Dennis Kimathi. Tuche,
Yeah.
are you in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Felix. Nice to hear from you again. We're building KotaniPay in Tanzania here in Africa, and it's basically an all-in-one stablecoin platform. For payments, this includes payment links, swaps between stablecoins, setting invoices, as well as on and off ramps. We're currently on Base Network, and we're expanding to different blockchains with Scroll and integrating USDT as well in the markets we operate. Thanks.
Great. Chiza, Dennis Kimathi, are you able to speak?
Give me a second.
All right. I think as Dennis prepares, we can have Licky.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Licky Nzeru. I'm the creator of Quest Panda. We are building an online platform where brands can create online contests for content creators. Like, let's say you have a new product in the market and you're looking for new users for your product. So you can create an online contest on our platform where content creators get to share about your app on TikTok, Instagram, and X, and the best creators get rewarded. Yeah.
Awesome. Timoth.
Hi guys, my name is Tim. I'm from Bondly. Basically, Bondly helps couples when workers create both emotional and financial, backed by blockchain. So, like in shared saving goals, so yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Pablo. Pablo, are you in a position to share?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you. And yeah, my name is Pablo. I'm from Carbon Seek, and we are trying to accelerate we're trying to reward businesses and individuals for sustainable businesses. For example, whenever they issue it electronically, we convert that receipt into a carbon. And so we're starting with receipts. So we're going to be moving into electric vehicles in the near future. Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. Dennis Kimathi, you ready?
Yeah. So Dennis Kimathi here, building Expendi. So ideally, Expendi is supposed to help you manage your finances, and the inspiration came from using Web2 apps such as you need a budget, Mint, but the experience for me wasn't good because I'm a crypto native user, and the way I use crypto on daily transactions was hard for me to use such kind of apps. So that's why I'm working on Expendi. Ideally, I can track all my payments, basically know where my money is going to. Then also slowly integrating DeFi protocols as well, so that I can also earn yield from that. Quality tracking as well, and analytics on the app. Yeah, so that's what I'm building with Expendi.
Thank you, Dennis. Hilary Collins.
Yeah, hi, my name is Collins. So I'm working on a product called BPesa. So BPesa is the mobile money solution. So just to give you context, is the way normal mobile monies work, like M-Pesa, Airtel Money and such. But now we are building the same kind of flow, but with the base of Web3 and cryptocurrency. So basically using stable coins. And what we are allowing with BPesa is sending of money from you can do P2P transactions, but also we are building on top of an agentic infrastructure. So this means you can be able to withdraw, deposit hard cash from anywhere. So anyone can become an agent, and we are already compliant in terms of regulations. And of course, now that we're dealing with cryptocurrency, we can be able to send and receive any currency, any funds in the different currencies. And also to note how the application has been built is purely abstracted from the user. So it's not a product to be purely used by Web3 users, but also Web2, because the interface it's completely abstracted. Yeah, basically that's it.
Great, thank you. Chris, are you in a position to speak?
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Chris. I'm building Paylinks. Paylinks is a smart account-powered payment link platform. It allows users to receive crypto payments across different chains without even needing to set up a wallet with direct M-Pesa withdrawals.
Amazing. All right, so Felix, that's the crew. I think now you have a good idea of what is being built, and I think I can go ahead and share my screen.
Is Eve building anything? You can see there's Eve LiveX.
Oh, Eve, what are you building? Yeah, Eve is part of the admin support.
Okay, she's building Web3 clubs.
Yeah, she's building the node. Roslyn as well is Dunia Yetu, that's Ochi, and then myself. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. I don't know if you can project the slides for me, please. We'll just go pole through them. So like I mentioned, this is from my experience as Victor here also from NetApay. Nice. Okay. I think I know Victor as well. Yeah, but I think there's usually a lot of emphasis on the business, and with time you kind of realize that businesses are intricately connected to the founders. That is to say that it's hard to maybe if it's not working on slideshow, we can just do, because I did this on Gamma very quickly. So if we can just do a zooming in or something. I don't know. Maybe that will work. You only have view only. You don't have edit capabilities.
Yeah, I just have view only.
Let me see whether I can make this change.
Okay.
Editor. Oh, there's this other one. Okay. I think there's two, Alexi and Ale. All right. So Alexi.
Actually, no, I think we're good now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
So I was saying, good. So there's usually an emphasis on the business, and people often forget that these businesses rely very much on the founder. And so just the previous slide, Alex, there's a starting point, which is we must always first think about you as a person. And that's why I'm putting you at the center of everything, because your energy, your passion, everything that is going to make this thing work will most likely come from you, and then maybe later from others. So we need to consider for our own selves aspect of self-care, mental health. You need to consider meditation if you're into that. You need to consider having an actual social life. Things that you do with others that you enjoy. You need to think about having a support system. And support system necessarily doesn't have to be family, doesn't have to be a partner. It just has to be somebody that you can talk to about life and life challenges in a very open way. And even if you don't get solutions, at least you get catharsis. More importantly, I think it's important to have a clear vision and important goals, things that you want to achieve over the next, if you're given life, and if you're lucky enough to wake up tomorrow morning, what is it that you want to achieve? And I'm not just talking about superficial things like cars and houses. I mean, like in the next 5 years, if I've done this, and if I've been to these places, and if I have at least achieved this and that skill, I think I'll be very happy. And then, of course, you need financial literacy, which we'll talk about at the end, because I see a lot of startup founders going to this thing without ever thinking about their finances. And it can be very brutal sometimes as a journey compared to maybe getting a job at a bank. So at the center of everything, always remember there is you, and you have to establish a rhythm. I usually say, instead of just a timetable, establish a rhythm that works for you, whether that's gymming in the morning, I don't know, music, or whether that's sleeping early. Establish a rhythm that works for you. Then you have the immediate environment. The immediate environment here usually is the 5 people that you spend most time with, because you're going to be an average of them. So you are an average of the 5 people you spend most time with, and you have to think about who these 5 people are. In the case of your team, if you're spending most of your days around your team, you'll be an average of what the team is. And that's why you usually hear that A players, like to work with other A players. And if an A player makes a mistake of going to bed with a B player, the B player will most likely bring a C player, because the B player doesn't want, somebody who's better than them or whatever. So you end up with an organization or a team whose average is quite low. If you want to achieve more, if there's more sacrifice to be made, they kind of bring your average a bit lower. So you have to think about your immediate environment. Then there is the external environment. There is what you expose yourself to on a daily basis, which is what I call their content. If you find yourself in a certain niche, or you're building for a certain market, a certain consumer base, your knowledge of that consumer base and of that market needs to be very deep. And because this knowledge is not on the surface, you're not going to find it just by reading 1 or 2 articles. You really have to go occasionally into things I call rabbit holes. That is days or weeks on end where you are trying to figure out solutions to this particular market. So even if, for example, as we talk about on-ramp, off-ramp, it's broadly on-ramp, off-ramp happens around the world, but there's also on-ramp, off-ramp in Africa. And there are details to on-ramp, off-ramp in Africa. And there are various teams that have tried this on-ramp, off-ramp in Africa. And some of them have succeeded, and many of them have failed. And so the question is, why is it that this team that had such a beautiful product that worked very well, how come they chose to give up on this idea? You'll often find that the idea that you're building right now, somebody has tried it before in a different flavor or at a different time, and it did not work out. So there's usually postmortems to read from, trying to find out why did this thing not work out. What you watch on YouTube, what you listen to, podcasts, all those things matter. At the end of the day, all that knowledge comes together and helps you in building your business. The hackathons, conferences, meetups are also important. It's not, I think it's very arrogant to think that you know everything. And so all you need to do is build. There's no problem with building. You can build 4 out of 5 days in a week. But from time to time, once in a while, it's good to go and hear other people's opinions. And some of them might be less, it's knowledge that you knew about 3 years ago. And some of it might be mind-blowing, something that you've never thought about or never had. But if you don't give yourself a chance by going to these things, you don't get to meet these people. So we've talked about you yourself as a founder. Understand that if your health is compromised, then there is no way for you to make anything for society. There's no way for you to see the kind of change that you want to see. It's important to take care of yourself. Immediate environment, external environment, and then finally is what we call the ecosystem. And I've always said this, part of the reason I think Kotani succeeded for the 5 years that has been there is because it's built within an ecosystem. So there is a global community that is very much focused on the problem that you are focused on. There are most likely other people in Ukraine, in Poland, in India, in the US, who are building the same thing. And they probably have ideas about how to go through problems. They probably have open sourced some of this as code. So all of this comes together very nicely when you think about the milieu. So we call this the milieu. The milieu meaning, you know, the greater environment in which a startup founder finds himself in. Next slide. Okay. So now that you have spoken about your milieu, the 5 people who are around you, external environment, the meetups you go for, the ecosystem you find yourself in, and it's important to build an ecosystem. Say, for example, in the case of Kotani, we started with Cello ecosystem. Should you start in the Scroll ecosystem? You want to know who's the founder of Scroll. How many Scroll nodes are there globally? What are some of the most successful Scroll dApps that exist? And so on and so forth. So the next one is the product itself. And you have already had this lean startup thing, maybe to death. You have had this until you're tired of it. But I want to reiterate it because it works, which is there is usually this obsession that certain founders have with their solution, although their solution might not be solving any problem. So you have a wonderfully crafted solution and you're in love with it. You have gone into the rabbit hole that you have spoken about. So you have a lot of information on it and you have even gone and built it. And not only have you built it, you've even gone further and perfected it. But in the absence of interaction with a real world customer, it might all be in vain, right? You might actually be wasting time. The best products are minimum viable products because they allow you, they give you a chance to change the product based on what you're hearing from your environment and from your customers. So we start at the top with an idea, whatever idea it may be. We formulate a hypothesis. We say, if this idea was to work, we expect these are the people that will be impacted by it. And we expect this is the amount of money that we'll make from it. We expect these people will be willing to pay because of 1, 2, 3 things. Great. Okay. Then you build something small. You build the minimum viable thing that you're going to go and show these people. Because again, you can't show up at a customer's desk or office or go and meet customers on the street with nothing. You know, again, people are not there to waste time. But you can validate before you even build something. You could go and ask around and find out, are people interested in this thing? If I'm in entertainment and I've never spoken to people in entertainment, or I'm in social media and I've never spoken to advertisement firms that use social media, or I'm doing on-ramp, off-ramp, and I probably want to target a certain group of customers and I've never spoken to them, I'm wasting time. I'm most likely going to build something that is Cadillac that nobody's going to drive. So it's that important for us to measure what we build, and that's what you're seeing there. So after I build a product, I go there, I test it with actual people. What I get from that is valuable data. People tell me, you know, I get what you're building here, but there's this and that. So for us, in the case of KotaniPay, the thing that stood out for us was we ended up at a meetup, these meetups that I'm talking about, and we had the first team from Cello. They'd never been to Africa, but they already had a running pilot in Kibra. And They basically had people there with wallets, blockchain wallets. The guys will receive CUSD, and then a guy will come with cash, and he will exchange this USD for cash in Kibra. And with time, it became very, it was insecure for the guy because everyone knew this guy comes at this point in time. And so it became not only insecure, it also could in scale, because how many of these guys can you have around Kenya exchanging CUSD for cash? The workers, by the way, were doing very important work. We later find out that these workers in Kibra who were getting paid $2 a day were actually annotating data for OpenAI. We never do that. So they were, they're taking images. The images have boxes around them. This is a dog, that's a cow, this is a car, etc., etc. But these millions of images were actually being used by the OpenAI team to train the algorithms. So when we saw this, we were like, I think we can solve this problem for you. And whereas we know you cannot directly connect to M-Pesa here in Kenya, there are ways around it. And we have built something. We have actually built a prototype, and we demonstrated the prototype. So that this is the importance of coming to the customer with something. So we showed them you can do *384#, and then it gives you a drop-down menu there. You can see your USD balance because we had actually built on Cello, and you can cash out directly to M-Pesa. They were shocked and amazed at the same time. Shocked that there were people in Kenya who had gone into the Cello docs and read them and actually built something, and surprised that their problem seemed to have been solved, essentially. So we had the lack of testing now we had the lack of having an actual customer that we can test with. And we went on to test with them. We started with 200 individuals. We expanded that to 1,000. We expanded that to 10,000. We expanded that to 50,000. So by the time we were getting our first grant from the Cello ecosystem, we were well known within the ecosystem. And we were well known within the ecosystem because we had taken a pilot they had and a problem they had, and we solved it. And I usually like to say our first customer was actually the protocol itself, the foundation themselves. So you want to go through this process, but you want to make sure that you're not spending 6 months to 2 years building something that no one will need as much as you think they might need it. Next slide. So there are also certain important principles that are good to have or good to know when you're starting the journey or when you're continuing with your journey. And this is, you have to know when to change course, like when to change the route, right? If you're going to Mombasa, for example, or going to Eldoret, there are many ways to get there. But if you want the easiest route there, you must follow the signs. So the first one is beachhead market. Now we have moved from yourself as an individual, what works for you. The team that you're working with are going to basically determine your average. The meetups you go through, the conferences, the content you expose yourself to will determine your knowledge base. And if you combine that knowledge base with a minimum viable product that is tested with an actual customer over a couple of months, then you probably have something that works. Now, beachhead market is, and this is a principle for something called the 24 Steps of Disciplined Entrepreneurship, a book I like very much from MIT, is if I have done a minimum viable product for the first customer and they love it and they like it and they're using it, not only are they using it, they're giving me back data. They're telling me, hey, I used this and this is not working. Or I did this and this, I feel like we can improve if we do this and this. That's very good. Because from that single customer, you can get a demographic. You can get somebody who you can build a business around. And the beachhead market refers to the narrow, winnable market that you can then expand from. Because today, if you're to, for example, go after the whole of M-Pesa's market, you're going to fail. You don't have the resources, you don't have the mouthpiece, you're not loud enough to conquer all the segments that M-Pesa has conquered. So you need to think about a very narrow band of customers that you will have an easy time with, if I was to describe it that way. As a founder, as a team, you feel like if I concentrate on this customer base, this narrow, thin demographic, I will win. And so you take customer number one and you say, are there 10 other customers like him or her? Or if it's a business, like this business, are there 10 others? And if there are 10 other customers, that's your beachhead market. That's where you start. So what you apply to customer number one, you apply to customer number 5, number 10, number 15, and number 20. And by the time you get to customer number 15 and number 20, you will know whether you need to pivot, which is the next very important concept, which is we hear a lot from other entrepreneurs who have made it. Usually it's the case that they're either multimillionaires or billionaires, that you need to be passionate and you need to push no matter what. Yes, you could be passionate and you need to push no matter what, but you're pushing in the wrong direction, or you're pushing against a wall, or you're pushing against a dead end. What you need to do is, if you've identified your first 10 customers and they are all giving you a certain signal, if it means that you have to change direction, then consider it with your team. Don't be too rigid and change direction. Early on in my entrepreneurship career, I had a friend of mine who was not one to change direction. And of course, we parted ways because of that, because whatever product we were building before, we couldn't continue with it. So I left that direction and chose a different direction. And the different direction continued to work, not only for me, but also for my other friends, my other compatriots like Daniel Timothy Atelo, and so on and so forth. So it's important that you understand that sometimes changing direction does not mean losing direction. It actually means going in the right way. Then finally, the sweet spot. You find a sweet spot if your customer's pain overlaps with the solution you have built and overlaps with the business model that will work for you. So in the case of our USSD wallet, and I'll tell you the reason why we had to pivot away from it, in terms of the customer pain overlapping with the viable solutions, it did. So we had a bunch of customers who did not have smartphones, they had feature phones. The customer was a blockchain company and was looking to send funds via stable coins. And in fact, at that point in time, stable coins were a very new concept. They were like fairly new, I think 1 year old or 2 years old. So the customer pain overlapped quite well with a viable solution that we provided. And remember, this was a minimum viable solution. It was rudimentary, it was a small, it had only three features. The ability to create the wallet via USSD, check your balance, and cash out to M-Pesa. That was it. There was no, nothing big about it. And we went, like I said, using that to gain traction. So we moved from 10 to 20 to 100 users to 5,000 users. Now we started getting limits in customer support. What I mean by that is people would call my co-founder Sam at night and be like, "Where's my money?" And it's like 100 bob, which they have been given for free. The problem with it was the business model could not work because we will process $10,000. Okay, that's volume. We will charge a small percentage. We'll make $100 within the month. $100 within a month means that even the guy who's selling smoky and the eggs on the side of the road is making more money than you are. Even if we try to scale it, the other challenge you have with NGOs is they have set budgets and they have limits on how much they receive. And it's also not an everyday affair. So we'll do a pilot for 2 months, and then we'll stay without work for another 2 months before the next pilot. Because pilots are run, they have a timeline. They start at a particular point, they end at a particular point. then you wait for the next pilot. And whereas we actually did, I think, a total of 8 pilots or so, from a strategic point of view and thinking as a businessman, it wasn't sustainable for us. We needed something that gives us volume daily, every day, because we make money by charging the fees on every transaction. So that's what we mean by the sweet spot. Sweet spot is I have a customer paying, I have a viable solution. The last piece of that sweet spot has to be a viable business model that works and is able to support the cost of the business. Next slide. So this is something, again, that I believe you have heard about, which is, it's called the startup J curve. And what you can see there is we start with the idea, okay? Start with the idea, we build a minimum viable product. The minimum viable product, the only way we can know whether it's working or not is by actually speaking to customers. Doesn't matter. People even say, you know, me, I'm not building a Web2 product. I'm not building a centralized app. I'm building a decentralized app. Fine, you're building a decentralized app, but even decentralized apps have users. Even if you're building an AI agent app, this is an application that can only be consumed by AI agents. Those AI agents are your users. That is the data that you want. The decentralized application users are your users. If you're building something that is heavily dependent on tokenomics and a token, how people behave with that token, what they do with that token once you launch. And by the way, tokens, you can also launch, in testnet. You don't have to do the main launch. You can do testnet stuff, basically. But the way people behave around that token, how they treat that token, their holding of that token determines whether you have reached something called product market fit, which you can see there, product market fit there. Now, product market fit as a concept, again, it's a spectrum. That's what I would say. I wouldn't say that all product market fit is the same. If you have a viable solution to a customer pain, you have achieved product market fit, I would say stage 1. But product market fit can go all the way to stage 10. And at stage 10 of product market fit, you have more customers than you can service. In fact, you get overwhelmed by the number of customers who are demanding to use your product. Your systems start collapsing. In the case of Ethereum, what happened when their product market fit was achieved around 2017 with the CryptoKitties thing is the system became clogged. There was network congestion. There are more people who want to use the network than there is available RAM and resources on the network. So product market fit can be stage 1 to stage 10. If you get 1, 2, 3, 4 customers who buy your product, to some extent, there is a fit there between the product and the customers. It might not be a strong one, but it is there. There is some evidence of something happening there. And if you reach product market fit and you're able to grow now from what we talked about, single customer, 10 customers, 50, 100, 1,000, move from 1 token holder to 2 token holders to 10 token holders to saying we have a community of 1,000 wallets created. That is growth, right? That growth gets you out of that place called the valley of death. Actually, 90% of startups don't make it past the valley of death. 90% die there. And then you're expected now to get to early stage. From early stage, if you raise some funds, you can scale your team. If you scale well and you have good culture and everything else, you can expand. And then it reaches a point where everybody gets bored with the product and they want to move on. And that's some level of maturity that has been achieved there. And that happens all the time with all products. But the surprising thing for me also as an entrepreneur, as founder, is you realize, which is the other image shown down there, I'm sure it's not very clear, but you realize that at every stage, it's not as smooth. The curve is not as smooth as it looks here. It's almost like if you were to look at the price of Bitcoin and say, Bitcoin is moving up and down every other millisecond. When you look at it closely, you will see it will be a raggedy curve. If you look at it from far away, it will be a smooth curve, somewhat moving up in price. So it's the same here, which is at every stage of your business, you will face a new valley of death. Surprisingly. So, for example, if you are just starting out, it is all about growth. It's all about early traction. If you get to, let's say, full-scale products, if you're not able to get more people adopting your product and a business model that supports the cost of that team, you will still die. There's a valley of death there. There's a valley of death around profitability also, valley of death there. So I often find people talk badly about, Copia and everybody else, Sandy and all these guys, and they're like, hey, how can guys raise so much money and still fail? It's possible to raise so much money and still fail. I mean, BlackBerry had a company called RIM behind it, which was very successful. And when they got to a point where they could not innovate around the BlackBerry phone, they still failed. Kodak, which used to be the be-all, end-all when it comes to cameras and films and film chemicals and everything, refused to look at the digital cameras, a viable business model, and they still failed. Blockbuster, which was Netflix before Netflix, and they had a whole system, and they, So my point is, the valley of death never leaves. It's only that it's very much associated in the early stage because many people don't go past that early stage of valley of death. So there's usually low traction at that stage. There's a high risk of failure. And that's why we are saying, should you notice that you have low traction, you have no business sticking to that idea. You need to pivot to something that works and something that has high traction. Okay, next slide, please. Part of the thing that we need to learn, and I'll not belabor this one too much, is business model. And again, I say, even if you're in the Web 3 space, let's say you are a blockchain protocol, for example, there's a business model around blockchain protocols with network fees. They charge network fees, they earn revenue. If you don't get to a point where you, as a blockchain protocol, are getting enough people using the network, then you die. And there are a lot of dead blockchain protocols there that we don't talk about it. But if you, for example, start from number 200 there, most of these blockchain protocols are just dead. Just 2 people or 3 people who keep on posting on X and Telegram. But for you to have the success of, let's say, Ethereum, where there's about $450 billion that is staked, you actually need to have a business model that's viable. So the business model canvas helps us understand our business model, whatever that business model may be. So value proposition, what problem are you solving for the end customer? What is the pain you're solving? What is the gain you're making for them? Channels, how do you get this product to your customers? Customer relationships, how do you get, grow, and keep your customers? And at the end of that, what are your revenue streams? On this other side, what are your daily activities? What is it that you do every day? And with that, what are the key resources that you need? And with that, what are the key costs that you have? So business model canvas helps us understand our business model. So remember, we started with us as people, and we said, we want to know ourselves. We want to understand ourselves, our goals, our vision, what makes us tick, etc., etc. We want to move beyond that. We want to move to the team, who are the people around us. And then we want to move beyond that. We want to move to the product. We want to develop a minimum viable product. And then we want to move beyond the product. That's a challenge here I usually see again with entrepreneurs is there are many entrepreneurs who never move beyond the initial product. They're stuck there. So move beyond the initial product to the customers. Then after we move from the initial product to the customers, we now get to a point where the customers are giving us money. We have a sweet spot. So we have a viable solution to a customer paying. But does the business model work? Is it something that can sustain a team of, let's say, 5 guys over the next 5 years? Is it something that can grow further than that? So that business model innovation and business model understanding comes from the business model canvas. Next slide, please. So then we come now to raising. And for raising, It's a simple thing, which is initially what you want to do is you want to go for non-dilutive raising. So non-dilutive means you have a company, you don't want to raise, and Alex, I'm seeing we are almost at time, so that means this thing will shut itself, right?
No. We can continue. We have leeway for 10 more minutes.
Okay, 10 more minutes. Okay, so I'll try rush there. So the initial aspect of, if you've done all that we have said you have done, you started with yourself, you went on, dealt with the team, you went on, did a minimum viable product, you went out there, you actually spoke to customers, they told you, no, we don't need this. You pivoted. After pivoting, you found 2 or 3 who said, yes, I think this is good for us. Can you give us your docs? We want to integrate. Or what is the name of the app again? Let me download it. And then you have seen initial traction and everything. You want to now take this and enter into competitions. Don't fear competitions, because there's one thing they'll teach you, which you will need to have as a skill and as a founder throughout your life, which is storytelling and pitching. So if you take your minimum viable product, go for a hackathon somewhere, pitch it in front of judges, get asked questions and difficult ones, the worst thing you can do is take that feedback negatively, right? Because not everyone, okay, there are people who are like dicks by nature, but not everyone is a dick. Not everyone wants to spoil your day. Some people are just curious. Like, have you thought about this and that? Or like, do you think using this is a good idea? Or it's been my experience, or we tried this in Poland and it failed because of 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So if you take that wealth of knowledge and try and improve your product and your business model, it's only making your life easier. You don't have to go through the 6-year cycle trying to learn something that somebody already learned 6 years ago. Like, you can just take their learnings and say, okay, but what if we were to change 1 or 2 things? So I often find that competitions, bounties, hackathons have their place. They have their place in that they teach you how to present, storytelling, and they teach you how to pitch. And then once they teach you how to pitch and present, they also, if you're lucky, and if you win a prize, give you money to run, to continue running, right? You go here, you win $2,000. Go there, you win 15,000. Go to another one, win nothing. Go to another one, win something. And that's how, for example, in KotaniPay, we participated in Silo Camp. We participated in quite a number of other competitions. I think Silo Camp gave us, what, $2,000. We participated in another one, got nothing. Participated in another one called Babylon Hackathon. We were told we were the winners, and the winner would get $150,000. Then once we won, it was a global hackathon, they started taking us around in circles. We continued. We got we won grant from Celo because of the traction that I spoke about in terms of helping refugees. That was $100,000. So there are quite a number of grants, competitions, bounties, and so on that you can go through that you then use to fund your operations. Something else about this whole non-dilutive thing is it teaches you something about your co-founders and your team. Because I often say there's no problem at all when the startup doesn't have money. Problems start when you get funding. Because that's when people reveal their true nature. If somebody is greedy or a thief or self-centered or any of those things, their true nature will show once you get that funding. The first big funding you get, maybe let's say like $50,000, their true nature will show. So it's a very important point to go through, at least first. Then once you have your MVP and you have some traction, then you can consider dilutive capital, either through an incubator and through an accelerator. Again, no matter how bad the situation is, don't be desperate. The incubators, and I don't even know whether to call them incubators or idea killers, that will come in and say, we're going to give you $100,000, but we want 25%. Okay. $100,000 is not small money in Africa, but you'll realize in the grand scheme of things, it's also not a lot of money. It's easy to finish. In some places, it's not even a car that you can buy with that money. So you want to stick with the principle of, if I'm to continue building this thing for the next 6 to 7 years, I will need to own a good share of it. So that I'm motivated. Every day I wake up in the morning, I'm motivated because I know I have some ownership here. So don't give away 25%, but also don't stick to the thing. Like if they're taking 5% for $100,000, you can live with it. Like it's okay, it's fine. Unless there is another clause like exclusivity that says you can't work with anybody else except us, which then limits your capabilities and your ability to grow. But if they're giving you a good amount, let's say for 5 to 10%, take it, use it to continue building. Don't get trapped into lifestyle disorders, because those are the things that kill startups. And then, at the next stage, which is now VC, pre-seed, seed, there are also some principles to follow. So if we go to the next slide, Matu, for just a minute, you will see dilution by stage, or rather what is recommended for dilution by stage.
Also, Felix, just to highlight, time is not, let's just continue. I think this is very important. Just take your time.
Yes. Okay. So if you look at this slide, it shows you ownership at various stages, right? So we're even talking before seed, right? When we're talking about non-dilutive, which means grants and competitions, hackathons, bounties, etc., we're even talking before seed. You use that money to do your MVP. You use that money to do research with your customers. Because again, if you're B2C, that means you need to actually meet real people on the street, or people who have downloaded your app. If you're B2B, it means you have to go to their offices, or you have to meet them over virtual calls and whatnot. But you will need some resources to do that work. But once you get into an accelerator incubator, they'll teach you the same things. They will teach you, for example, your main metrics. What is my main metric as a payment startup? I can tell you for KotaniPay, it's gross transactional volume. How much volume did we process today? How much volume did we process in the last 1 hour when I'm here with you? How much volume did we process for the quarter? And then of that, how much are we charging? So that's GTV. If you have a marketplace, it's gross merchandise value. How many people are coming to that marketplace with actual goods and services? Because once they exchange, at the point of exchange, that's where you're charging. That's where your value is created. If you're looking at a network, say a social media network, or you're doing advertisements, then you're looking at total number of users, monthly active users, daily active users, because again, you're monetizing the user attention. User attention is how TikTok and everybody else makes their money. If this guy's on this platform 8 hours a day, we can throw in certain brands here and there, and those are number of eyeballs. That is something that you can actually sell to a brand. But total number of users or monthly active users for KotaniPay is of no use, because one customer could come with $1 million, and I charge him a percentage, and I make my fee. So for me, what's more important is the volume, and a lot of the concentration goes into that whole issue of volume. So at every stage, let's say in the incubator accelerator stage, you're actually learning about metrics, how to grow your metrics. At the end of that, they might give you some money for a certain percentage. But like I've said, don't be desperate to give away a quarter of everything, even including your token, if you have a token kind of model, just because he's presenting $150,000. And again, of course, also these are discussions to be had internally. Then once you get to seed is now where you meet actual venture capitalists. Usually, in my experience, people with big heads from Stanford, Princeton, Harvard. If it's in the case of Web3, it's usually a guy who made his money in Bitcoin long time ago, and now he's a billionaire, or he's a very early Ethereum founder. early Ethereum angel even. So he's one of the few guys who had the balls to invest in the first Ethereum ICO. So they usually have very big heads. And what I mean by very big heads is not like, I'm not abusing anyone. I'm just saying they love intellectual discussions. Intellectual discussions around where is this headed? Why do you think this will work? Why is your approach better than so-and-so's approach? If you're given all the money in the world, how will this scale across, get into the next billion? Because that's our focus. How does this interact with artificial intelligence and AI agents and so on and so forth? And after they ask you all these, what looks like irrelevant questions, somebody will then decide, we will invest $1.2 million, right? It's not a small amount of money. We'll invest $300,000, but they're usually big heads. So all the work that you've done early on in your founder journey with the rabbit holes, the content that you follow on YouTube and whatnot, the Substack Medium articles that you like to read every now and then, the Discord groups and Telegram groups where you find yourself and enter into intellectual discussions and sometimes even intellectual arguments. All those things will help you down the line. So that's why it's important to start with you. Because then, somebody asks you a question, you can even find that it's a random question, but you remember there's actually something you read somewhere and you're able to give an opinion on it. The things that VCs don't like are cricket sounds. And then the rest for VCs are just the conventional things. The conventional things meaning things that you will learn in accelerator incubators. These things like business canvas model. So that if I was to ask you what's your value proposition, it's very clear what I'm asking. I'm asking like, what pain are you solving for the end customer? What gain are you making for them? If I was asked to ask you, do you guys have a data room? You know what a data room is. If I was to ask you, what are your customer relationships? You know how to say it. If I was to ask you, what are your financial projections over the next 3 years? How much money do you think you're going to make? What's your revenue model? How are you going to charge? You're not going to tell me 6 things. You're just going to tell me 1 or 2 things, and I'll be satisfied. So all those things, what is your main metric? How is your main metric? Let's say, for example, it's GTV or it's gross merchandise value. How is it growing month over month? So whether it is a Web3 VC or a traditional VC, the questions are the same, just that the ground is different. So at seed stage, when you meet a seed VC, again, remember, as much as they're also giving you a lot of money, there are stages to go through if you choose to go through those stages, right? And your seed investor, I guess in the case of Web3, is a guy who's willing to buy even the first initial tokens and give the tokens a price. And then he can get rid of the tokens somewhere down the line when your tokens go live. So as a founder or a CEO, remember, as a founder or a CEO, you will have the responsibility of worrying about everything. There's no problem that will take place in your startup related to you or otherwise that you'll not be expected to solve. Say, for example, there's a culture problem. There are people there in the startup who are a problem to others. The person who will be expected to solve that problem is you. And if there's a regulation problem, say, for example, Kenya wants to ban crypto, and Kenya is your main market. The person who's supposed to solve that problem is you, because now you have to learn something else called lobbying as a concept. You have to enter into suits. You have to find who's important in that regulatory space. You have to find a way to connect with them and educate them. So then they change their minds as to whether or not they need to ban this thing. And you have seen this even with Coinbase, right? So Coinbase, just before this election, noticed that the Democrats in the US are very anti-crypto. I don't know for what reason, but there's a senator there called Elizabeth Warren who has an influence on how they think. And they decided the only way to survive is to, because now we even have a wealth notice from the SEC, is to fund their competitors. And given the amount of challenge that Trump was going through at the time, for them to come together with something called the Stand with Crypto Alliance, fund that, and it doesn't matter. This is is this not about morality? One might look at this and say, but we're supposed to be centralized, we're not supposed to be supporting government, etc. Yes, but for Coinbase specifically, they're thinking about their business and how to protect their business. So when they funded Trump and won and got the Wells notices withdrawn, it's because they took on a strategy which was political in nature. It had nothing to do with the technology. It had nothing to do with decentralization or the base network or any of that stuff. So what I'm saying is, as a CEO, you'll always be the problem solver of all kinds of problems. If you are hacked today and you lose a significant amount of money, the person who wants to go to the investors and say, we got hacked and we lost a significant amount of money, and this is how we are repairing this whole issue, is you. It is still you as a CEO. So don't feel guilty taking 30% at a stage like seeds. Same goes for your co-founder, the other guy who you will fight through the trenches with. Again, no problem. You need a 20% optional pool for everyone else. What do I mean by everyone else? There are people that you'll start building with, and then they'll get an opportunity to work as a scroll ambassador for Africa. They will not continue in that trench with you there, trying to build something small when they're being given a salary of, let's say, this is just an example, I don't know how much they compensate. Let's say they give $6,000 a month. The guy that you started with, as much as he's your friend and everything, and was there in the beginning, also has to think about himself and his life and where his life is headed. And so always have an option pool. Option pool means these are shares or stock that will only be enacted at a certain point in future when you are exiting. And then, of course, investors, the ones who come in, take 20%. Investors find it a red flag if you're agreeing to giving away too much of the tokens or too much of the equity, because it means for you, the equity and the tokens have no value. And so if you're willing to give away 40%, 60%, then why should I, as an investor, invest in your startup? So always be very jealous in guarding your equity and guarding your tokens. Series A is a different stage. I haven't reached there myself, but it's usually the case by the time you are at Series A, you have $1 million in revenue, $1 to $3 million in revenue. Now, this is revenue. I'm not talking about volume. I'm talking about the money that remains on the table after you pay all your expenses. So the conventional one, although people sometimes usually just raise without even, meeting some of these metrics, the conventional one is at least you should be at $1 to $3 million in revenue. Series B, you can see there, by Series B, as a founder, you've been diluted to 15%, it's okay. Series C, you've been diluted to 12%, it's okay, and so on and so forth. So whether you're raising conventionally or raising through a token sale, this part of the business called the cap table is very important. And I often find many people make mistakes by giving an incubator somewhere, 25, 35% early on in the journey, which means they have less and less of the journey. On the previous slide, Matu, there was the final bit, which is scaling. So remember, we went through the initial stage, which was non-dilutive. Then we used that money, instead of us blowing it, buying cars, etc. We used it to build an actual product. And there's no problem in buying a car, you can. But again, just be moderate in how you go about things. So we now have a viable product. We use it to go through an incubator program, accelerator program, a quality one, by the way. So there are so many incubator and accelerator programs, but doesn't mean that all of them are quality programs. One that teaches you actual skills, which you can apply as an entrepreneur, all those things that we spoke about. And then I met some VCs. They believed in me. They gave me money based on how I was able to convince them, and based on the traction and based on the business and the business model, they're convinced this thing is going the right direction. Down the line, I'll tell you this, as a founder who has survived, what was it called? FinTech winter is what people called it here in Africa. What really matters down the line is revenue. At the end of the day, as much as people want to pay attention to vanity metrics means, yes, I have a metric that I'm tracking, but it has no impact on the final business model. Say, for example, I have 3,500 users. Okay, all right, and then you ask them, of those 3,500 users, how have you monetized those users? How have you made money out of them? It's almost like, what was your revenue last month? $10 or $20. It's so bad that in other cases, like there's a prominent African fintech startup that was using the main metric, which is GTV, as revenue, simply because they wanted to present this picture that they're making millions of dollars. So I take my GTV, say for example it is 30 million, and then I say this is revenue, right? Which is, in some places will be called outright fraud, but that's that. So what matters at the end of the day is once you reach a point beyond VC, where you have a product that has various customers, remember what we said. The sweet spot is customer pain overlaps with viable solution, overlaps with viable business model. There must be a business model that works. There must be a way in which people pay you money. And at least in today's world, long ago here being 2021, 2022, people used to talk about growth as, how many team members do you have now? And somebody will say, I have 150 team members, or I have 200 employees, or I have 1,000 employees. And from time to time, you still meet these VCs and these entrepreneurs who are focused on that. But that doesn't matter anymore. People look at annual recurring revenue, the amount of money you're making a year, divided by the number of employees you have. So for example, take Tether. It's, I think, the greatest example. Tether USDT is the most capitally efficient company globally. Capitally efficient based on this metric, because I think last quarter they made $10 billion in revenue. And this quarter they made 4.7 billion. And that also has something to do with the Fed rates. So we want to see how the business model will work should the Fed cut rates back to 1.5 or 2 or whatever. But if you're to take that amount that they made in the quarter, then divide it by the number of employees who are at that startup, you get now this ARR over employees. It's nothing that you need to worry about. If you're very early in this thing, if you are like doing MVPs, what you need to worry about is getting to an incubator accelerator where you can raise money and actually achieve scale and traction. But if you reach a point where you have already raised money, proceed, and you're achieving scale and traction, the next thing to worry about is revenue, and that's what will make you survive. The only reason why KotaniPay survived is because we had a lean team and we were actually making money. So even when funds dried up in the market, we could still survive. So like right now, even we are raising around, we've been successful in raising half of it simply because we had revenue, we had scale, we had traction. Of course, there are many other things, licensing, blah, blah, blah. But my point here is that you need to have a focus in revenue at least later on in your journey. Next and next. Okay. Then you have certain key concepts that are supposed to help you save your ship. Because starting this process and then ending up spending 5, 6, 7 years in it is not an easy thing for anybody. So the first one is called vesting schedule. I usually insist, even if you've formed an entity and have divided the stock already among you and your friends, consider reforming it somewhere where there are strong startup laws. So in this case, it could be Delaware or Singapore or Dubai, any of these places where at least the startup ecosystem is well trusted, whatever it is. For us, it's Delaware, but wherever it is. But you can reform, and when you form it could even be the same name of your startup. When you form it, make sure that everyone has signed on to this thing. So the vesting schedule, the way it works is, we have given you 30%. You are the CEO. Yes, okay, fine. We're giving you 36% of the startup, but you have to work for it. You have to earn it. So for every month that you are in this thing, you are vested. Call that vesting. For every month that you're in this thing, you're still vested into the business. So you earn your shares. That's 36%. Month by month by month for 4 years. And there's usually something called a 1 year cliff, which means in the first year, because you expect in the first year you are not being paid a big salary, you're mostly surviving and you're setting for the business, so we call it sweat equity. So you'll earn most of those shares in your first year. So let's say, for example, the share is 36%, about 40% of those shares you'll earn it in the first year, and then the rest you can earn slowly over the next 3 years. Vesting schedules will save you. We, for example, had very early on in our journey as KotaniPay, a co-founder who stole money, right? Like directly stole. You could see it. We even did an investigation, internal audit. We saw it. The thing about that whole situation was, given that they had done 2 years, they had already vested some of their shares. But once the board decided to release them, the remaining shares that are invested were given back to the company. Of course, the rest was disciplinary, legal case, blah, blah, blah. That's for lawyers to handle. But vesting helps you deal with situations like that, where you have a co-founder and they lose interest. You're continuing to give your all into the startup. Them, they already gave up long ago and they moved on. So it's, you only get, in the case of vesting schedule, you only get allocated those shares that we gave you at the beginning for the work that you're putting. It's good to have good lawyers, okay? Good lawyers who are aligned with your success. Another example is there was a VC when I was doing my second follow-on round. So I did 800, when I did my first accelerator program called Flory, we raised $825,000 from that. Around 2023, we decided we're going to raise again so that we can continue this thing at least for the next, for another 2 years. And it was the case that a lot of our current investors wanted to do something called follow-on. So they wanted to add more because they see this thing is headed somewhere. There's a guy who came with a $300,000 check. And tied to that $300,000 check was a side letter. So they usually are safe, and there's something called a side letter where they make all their requests known. In the side letter, they had inserted a lot of clauses. One of them, very innocent clause, which said that if the company did not comply with ESG requirements, environmental, social, and governance requirements, then the board could decide to fire the CEO, essentially. There was also another clause which we did not understand because it was only in law terms. But what the clause was saying was that they will be given a board seat in perpetuity. So in perpetuity means they get a board seat forever on Kotani. And then there was another one. There were like 3 or 4 clauses. Our lawyers in Delaware, very good lawyers, were very expensive. They're called Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe. They're actually the lawyers who defended Mark Zuckerberg against the Winklevoss brothers. So if you read that book, Bitcoin Billionaires, you'll see they're the ones who defended Mark Zuckerberg there. They were like, this is very aggressive. In fact, they told us these are hostile clauses. Hostile in the sense that ESG is too broad. Environment, social, and governance doesn't mean anything because, somebody can can create an accusation just based on a social thing or based on an environmental thing, and you are made to answer for it, and you're fired from your own startup. This is too aggressive. And they said, you'll rather give up on the $300,000, right? Now, hearing that when you need the money is not the greatest thing. You have to make the decision. Do I go with the investor or do I go with the lawyer? So we decided we're going to strike them out, and we did. And the investor agreed to signing. And then somewhere down the line, he had brought us a couple of people in this quote unquote talent to the startup. Guys who are very expensive. We used to pay them quite an amount of money that was negotiated by him. And it so happened that we reached a point where we felt these guys are not contributing anything, yet they're taking up so much. And so we had a conflict with the VC just over that whole hiring thing, which is we want to fire these guys. He doesn't want us to fire them. They're taking on too much, and so on and so forth. Typical startup stuff. And what really saved us in that setting was the fact that we hadn't signed onto the clauses about 6 months ago. Didn't matter how much he was putting in, that was detrimental to a startup. So you don't want to go into this game of raising, and this is why I'm saying very early on, just start with non-dilutive. You don't want to go into this game of raising without good lawyers, because there'll always be conflict. Not everyone will agree. Some people will have personal interests, and you might end up losing your business just like that. The final one is having a data room. And a data room means you have a centralized company knowledge or docs folder. It could be a folder, it could be a drive, whatever. But you need to be very orderly in how you go about your knowledge repository. And if you are both co-founders of this thing, you both need to have access to this data. So something as simple as we registered a company in Kenya. Good. Where is the certificate of incorporation? Where is the CR12? Where is the CR1, CR2, CR8? Are these things properly filed? Are they in a place somewhere? We got $25,000 in grants from this and this place. Wonderful. Where is the TXID, transaction ID, or a screenshot showing that you received those funds, and that is somewhere in the financials? And we use these funds to pay our people. So and so got 2,000 in salary, so and so got 1,500, so and so got this, and then the rest we use. Okay, fine. Where are the documents showing that you actually paid for these things? And are they in record? And we have made this much in volume, and we've done this much in revenue. Good. Do you guys have an accountant or an accountant equivalent who has actually put these things down in standard financial documents? The three most important ones are usually the profit and loss statement, the income statement, and the balance sheet. Do you have that? And is that filed in your documents? So the purpose of a data room is just to help you organize everything. Organize contracts. You've decided I'm going to employ my two friends who are engineers. We used to be with this guy in university. Has that guy signed on to the contract? And is that contract stored within a data room somewhere? Now I'll tell you, you reach a point, you are in, you have been lucky enough through Web3 clubs, you have gotten to an event in Poland, Warsaw, Poland. Okay, you have done very well, you have presented, and because you have been pitching for some time, almost pitching for 3-4 years, you understand how it works. Yes, okay. One guy, let's say even a Polish investor or a Chinese investor who happened to be at the same event, is very intrigued by your carbon credit solution. And they have a fund which wants to invest $400,000 in your startup. Wonderful, great news. That's great news for an entrepreneur. At least you have left Warsaw with a check. Okay, you find out that they have some time, maybe let's say they have like 3 or 4 or 5 months or 6 months even before the fund closes. And they send you a list of documents they need. Part of it being your audited financial statements for the last 2 years. Because you guys have been working for the last 2 years, did you get one of your accountant friends to audit your financials and put them in an order that is, can be presented to an investor? And you'll often find that there are a lot of startups, including one I know, one of my friends from Magma. Magma is a program run by Lava VC Fund. Got funding, got people who are interested in funding them, but they only had one problem. They backed out because there was no way that this person could present information on the transactions that they have been running. So say, for example, you are like us, you are an on-ramp off-ramp player, or you are a wallet that does DeFi stuff. You need to have your transactions, and in this case, we are lucky. We are all lucky because if you're using a wallet address, you have all the transaction IDs, and the transaction IDs will be there for all time. So it's all a matter of just having this either in Excel format or taking screenshots of this or having those wallet addresses somewhere so that then you can just refer to them later, right? You find startups go so far, people have been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years, but they don't have the necessary documents arranged in a way that an investor can consume. Very early on, what helped us with this data room stuff was early on in our journey. I was not even the CEO of Kotani at the time. I was the COO. We entered into a call with an investor, and the investor was like, "Do you guys have a data room?" And like, what do you mean by data room? And he was like, "You guys are very early, right?" And he actually just like logged off from the call. So it's the case that if you have a viable business model, an MVP that works, you have people who work with you, they should be under contract. You should have all your documents, whether it's registration there. You should have all your financial, especially financials, well organized. So that should the investor come, and of course, the pitch deck. And for the pitch deck, this pitch deck, you have to keep on changing it every year because every year you learn something new about your business. Every year you learn a statement or two that doesn't work. So you have to change your pitch deck in that data room, change it from this to that, because we're going to get through the nitty-gritties of raising. Okay, no, we skip these 2 slides, and I believe we should be getting to the end now. Okay, so this slide I think is the second last slide, if not the last one. So remember, whatever it is that you're building, you're helping a lot of people. You're most likely having impact, and you also most likely want to be successful yourself. There's nobody who gets into this with the mind of martyrdom. Everybody wants to succeed. But it's often the case that people don't understand where they are going and where they're headed and where they are. And I like to say that it's good to, there's this concept from the FIRE movement. FIRE movement is financially independent, retire early movement. So these are people who want to retire at 37, 40, and so on. And they go about actually getting to that point. Some element of financial literacy is very important. I've met founders who, or rather people who are part of the founding team at these African startups back then, you know, like we're talking about the likes of Jumbo Pay and others. And the only thing they left with was the t-shirts, the jumpers, and a whole lot of stories, war stories about what went right and what went wrong. And it's usually very sad. It's sad to see some of these things. And it's because somebody has not thought through their finances very well. And this finance thing can really stress your startup. If you have co-founders who are financially irresponsible, it will show up on this other side. They'll either start pushing for more pay, or they start pushing for bonuses, or somebody will outright theft, and so on and so forth. I'm sure even Matu and Ochieng will tell you their stories. But it's important that we know where we are. So stage 0 of the financial independence thing is usually financial dependence. Financial dependence means you're actually dependent on somebody else to pay your bills. So it might be that you have more debts than you have income, or you're just dependent on others' help. Your mother, your father, your parents, your brother, that kind of thing. What you want to do if you are there is you want to move to a point of financial solvency. And solvency here meaning that your income balances your expenses. And so you're not really dependent on others. And you're not really dependent on debt to survive. Whatever is coming in is what you're using to pay what is going out. You know, the usual things, rent, transport, blah, blah, blah. Then you move from that stage, from financial solvency to financial stability. What is financial stability? Financial stability is when you are already solvent, meaning your income balances your expenses, but you also take all your expenses, you multiply them by 6, and you set that money aside as an emergency fund. You know, the problem with this space also, by this space I mean the crypto space, is that we tend to take a lot of risks, simply because risks can pay off quite nicely, right? Like you are a holder of altcoins and shitcoins forever, right? And at some point, your altcoins and shitcoins make more money than you'll ever make for all time. I remember, like for my engagement, when I was engaging my wife, I put 11,000 Kenya shillings in a token called Moon River. It was Polkadot parachains at the time. This was 2021, and the 11,000 made 247,000 Kenya shillings for me. That is that's about 4,000% return on investment. If I had put in more money, I think I'll be wealthier today. But my point here being that because of the risk we take, and because we go to all these meetups and listen to all these great people and hear stories about, you know, how they had nothing, then they bought Bitcoin, then they lived off Bitcoin for 3 years. Then, you know, when Bitcoin reached $20,000 in 2017, they became multimillionaires. We want to replicate the same story, although that is an extreme example. And there are many extreme examples that you find in Web3. Extremely extreme examples. So there's nothing wrong in that. There's nothing wrong in trading or holding altcoins and doing all those things. But you know, life must continue, and life has its own challenges. And so it's important that we build some form of stability as founders. We have some money coming in, we have some money going out. Maybe you're being paid from your startup. You need to set aside money, 6 months worth of money for emergencies. Sometimes it's even usually like health emergencies that are the worst, because there's nothing you can do about that. Then there is something called debt freedom. In the US, they call it debt freedom because all major purchases in the US are somewhat financed using debt. So college, education is debt, house, mortgage is debt, car, loan is debt. So debt freedom is a concept that the FIRE movement has when you actually pay off all these major life expenses. So let's say, for example, you already have your own house, you bought it, you don't have to take, I think you can buy it directly, especially in crypto. If you time yourself correctly, you already have your car, you already have dealt with the major life expenses. If you're into marriage and stuff, you have done that. If you're not into marriage, your annual expenses, if you're to take it, you have assets that if you are to dispose of those assets, they will cover you in the case of stage 4 for 1 year, in the case of stage 5 for 5 years, in the case of stage 6 for 10 years. Now notice that these are the assets themselves. You have to dispose of the assets. So in a place like Kenya, people have a lot of emphasis on land because land is tied to credit. I think there was a report the other day that was saying 3 of the top Kenyan banks hold about 1.3 trillion in land assets. And it shows a weakness of our banking system here in Kenya, which is they only accept land as collateral, usually maybe a car as well. But they're obsessed with this land thing. So whatever it is, whether it's your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your land, whatever it is that you're holding as an asset meaning something that puts money in your pocket, something that gains value over time. Liability meaning something that takes money from your pocket and loses value over time. So a car, for example, is considered a liability because, or some will say a depreciating asset, because the price you're going to buy at this year is not the price it's going to be next year. So if you are an entrepreneur or a founder, you are not independent, you're not completely delinked from these steps. You have to think about these things so that you know at what stage you are and how you'll move the next step. And it doesn't matter. I'll surprise you. There are people who have very big jobs. They're paid a lot of money, but they have never moved from stage 1 and 2. They're always stuck there. Somebody earns 500,000. His lifestyle is 486,000. He only remains with 2,000 bob. That's a financially solvent person. But should they lose that job, their whole life crashes because they don't have any stability. They don't have any assets that can cover them for that long. They probably haven't dealt with the major life purchases. Then you have financial independence, where you now focus on cash flow. So for financial independence, focus is on cash flow, and you are not supposed to sell the assets themselves. It is the money from the assets that is helping you, balance your life. A good example will be you are the owner of a listed company, and there are stocks that you have sold to the public, and those stocks have dividends. So there are dividends that you're earning. Or you are a major Ethereum holder. You have staked that Ethereum with Lido, and Lido is giving you back yields. Every month there is something that's coming from the Ethereum you have staked on Lido. Then, and if that cash flow is enough to cover your life expenses annually, we call that financial independence. Independence in the sense that you don't have to work for anything, and you don't have to work for anyone. And then financial freedom is more than, I think it's 8 years worth of cash flow. And then financial abundance, where we all want to get as entrepreneurs and founders, is more money than you'll ever need. So I often find that people have not thought about this part. People always think about failure, but they actually never think about success, the other side of things. So you raise a $2 million round, and the next thing I see, you're in a very flashy car, and the next thing I see is the startup fails. The next thing I see, you fought with your co-founder, and so on and so forth. So real problems begin when money comes into the picture. Final slide. So what you want to do as a founder every day is you want to grow roots. What I mean by grow roots is sometimes I meet people this year and they're building one thing, and then I meet them next year, they're building something else, and then I meet them the year after that, they're building something else. They never grow roots in any practice, in any industry, in anything they're building. So there's this guy called Naval Ravikant. He talks a lot about, he was the founder of AngelList. He talks a lot about this whole element of growing roots within your industry. Because remember what we said earlier, it starts with you, then you have your immediate environment, then you have your external environment. At that point of external environment, the people you're meeting at conferences and meetups and so on and so forth end up being your network. The people you meet at global events or on an accelerator program, on an incubator program somewhere, end up being your network. And so, I met Alex and Ochieng in this same space. We have known each other for a while, but it all came from these same meetups. It's because I've grown roots in this place. And somebody else will grow roots in AI agents. And somebody else will grow roots in ZK. And somebody else will grow roots, you need to grow roots. So part of growing roots is, one, there's consistency. For me, consistency, the way I usually say is just showing up. I tell my people, it's important to just show up. Every day, show up. If there's a meeting, even if you're feeling tired, just show up for the meeting. You don't have to say anything, leave. If there is a customer meeting, we're supposed to have a meeting with a customer, enter the meeting. It might or might not transpire into anything, then leave. So that's called consistency. Daily effort, daily showing up. Resilience is bouncing back from setbacks, because you'll have a lot of them. You'll have multiple setbacks in this journey. The only way to survive is to have the ability to be resilient. And that's why I said you must learn to take care of yourself. Okay. However, whatever you need to do to, like a lot of you have met me, I like drinking and having a good time. That's my way of coping with my issues. Somebody else will be going to church. Somebody else will be hiking or meditating. But you need to have a way of recovering from your setbacks. Then finally, it's persistence, which means if you're very, very convinced that you're on the right path, and I'll tell you how you'll be very, very convinced that you're on the right path, you will taste some success. Okay, so along the way, as you continue to follow that path, you're testing one success after another with a couple of setbacks. So you taste success, you taste a setback, you test another setback, you push a bit, you get another setback, then you push a bit, you get massive success. Okay, then you push a bit, success. Then you push a bit, then as you're getting used to the success, setback, and so on and so forth. If you're on a path like that, where you're feeling I'm growing more and more as a person, and I'm feeling more and more confident in this space. Then what you need now is persistence, which means that you never ever give up. It's the biggest quality of any great founder that you have seen. Everybody from Elon with his rockets to Jobs with Apple after being fired there, to anyone else that you know, Vitalik with the Ethereum, with the world computer and the Ethereum virtual machine, and all the disasters that have, beautiful disasters is what they say, that have taken place in the Ethereum community, the 2014 DAO hack and so on and so forth. Like, all those are setbacks. If you are resilient enough and recover from them, and then push a bit and gain success, then why not persist? Because that's where success will, I think, in my experience, that's where it's come from. So I think I want to end it there. That has been longer than I thought, but I hope that it helps someone here.
Oh, wow, Felix, that was a masterclass. I think this is the most I've heard about KotaniPay. It's opened my eyes to a number of things. So thank you very much for this. So I want to invite brief questions from the teams. Dennis, anyone really with a question? Feel free also to reach out to Felix. I don't know, Felix, if Twitter would be the best way for them to reach out to you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay. Awesome. I think that was a masterclass.
Telegram.
Yeah. Telegram. Okay, we'll pass on your contact to them. But I have no words. You've covered a lot. We have a lot to digest. So we'll send you some feedback. We'll sit down with the teams and we just have some moments to process what you've learned. I don't know if you're in a position to share the slides with us as well. If that's possible, that also would be really good. And I know as well, since the program is for the next 2 months, at some point we'll reach out to you either to join us on demo day, virtually or in person. I'm sure also some of these guys will reach out to you to maybe review a pitch deck for them or give them feedback. So I want to thank you for just showing up and being with us and giving us this alpha. And since these guys don't want to ask questions, I'm suspecting it's because it's a Friday. They want to go and indulge. Let me send you any questions they might have directly, as well as the feedback.
Yes, and this is always in record, so future classes can benefit, I believe, from this.
Indeed. This is recorded. I think I'll review it as well again. Thank you very much, Felix. I have nothing else to add, apart from many more thanks. All right, so guys, let me end this here. Wishing you a very good weekend. Enjoy yourselves. See you guys on Monday. Thank you, Felix.